Yeah, I kind of believe that, Mike. I mean, you look at when you have a talent deficit on your roster, the manager's got to at least put your players in the best situation to win games when it's presented to them. And yesterday's situation, quite frankly, Ryne Sandberg did not. I mean, you look at the situation with Gomez over Giles in the eighth. If there would have been more of a cry, to be honest, if Ryan Howard's spot comes up in the ninth after the double switch and you're, see Andres Blanco go up there as opposed to Howard, who's your only legitimate power threat in what was, at the time of the switch, a one-run game. I mean, there's a lot of different things. Chad Billingsley yesterday, he labored in the fifth inning, and, he still sent him out for the sixth and sent him out without anybody warming in the bullpen right away. He had to kind of hustle to get the Freitas and Beekman up. Those are the types of situations you really openly question. And, when you look at it now, this isn't a rookie manager on his first go-around here. I mean, this is part of year 2/3 that he's been here. I mean, he had that little end of 2013 and then, all last year and then all, so far this year. He shouldn't be making these mistakes. And, you see the lineup inconsistencies. You see, the usage of people, that are kind of bizarre. That's where I think he's really running into trouble, and that's not even getting into the whole situation that caused the trouble last year with how he kind of rattled some people with the way he handled some of the older veterans.
Yeah, Kevin, I want to ask you about his relationship with the players on this team. Do you get the sense that this bunch of guys is supportive of him, or is it just a very unique I feel like there's no bond between this players and this coaching staff here. It seems like he's just kind of, doesn't have a lot of support from virtually anywhere.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good assessment. I mean, he doesn't, my line has always been he kind of disrespected the veterans with the way he handled the Rollins and the Howard situations last year when he kind of benched them and didn't explain to them what happened. And he didn't play the young kids enough or consistently enough to kind of get everybody there. So you kind of have this, there's no connection there. It doesn't seem like. I mean, there's no, it's tough to read because he's a quiet guy. I mean, you would always see Charlie kind of palling around with guys or anything. I think Rhino's a totally different personality, and while in a way that's good, it's also not good in a sense where I don't know if, even this far into it, we have a sense of what kind of manager he is. Is he a player's manager? Is he a disciplinarian? Is he? There's nothing at this point. He's not is he a strategic guy? Is he a strictly, is he one of those guys who will use matchups? I mean, I can honestly say after watching this, I'm still not sure I have a total read on it.
That's a good point you make up. What kind of manager does he want to be? What kind of manager does he think that he can be? And you just mentioned he's been here for now. He had that little, thing a couple of years ago. Then last year, he's been a manager in the minors, and yet you're saying you still can't get a read on him. You're wondering, is that this roster, or is that just him not really having a hand on what it takes to be a successful big league manager?
Well, I don't think he has a grip on what he has, and I think that's something that is beyond his control in a lot of ways. I mean, because, quite frankly, this is a AAA roster in a lot of ways. I mean, this is you look at this team, it has one power hitter. It's not deep. It's not going to score runs. Its starting rotation, aside from the top two guys, are pretty shaky. It's, this would be a handicap, as you said, for Tony La Russa, Joe Torre, all the established managers, okay? But, at some point, the manager goes too. I mean, and, I always believe that Sandberg's fate is kind of tied with River tomorrow, and that's where, and look, do I think he should be fired now? No. I don't think it would be worth anything. I think he deserves a little more time. But right now, what I was basically trying to say is the results are not encouraging at all.
You're right about that, and you wonder with the young players down in the minor leagues who, you're hoping could get here at some point soon, is Ryne Sandberg the right guy to have in place when they get here? And if he's not, then what? I mean, do you just keep kind of having him babysit this group of guys for a year or two and then make one swoop together, or would you rather have a guy that is ready and more prepared, or do they think Sandberg can get there? Do they have faith that he is the guy 2 years down the road?
Well, I mean, if you look at the comments from Ruben Amaro, he's publicly supported Sandberg. And again, I've always believed that Amaro probably couldn't make another managerial move. He made his one managerial move. That's a free one that every GM gets, okay? Now, I mean, obviously, if there's going to be a turnover, you would got to think that it's not just the manager. It'd probably be the general manager at this point, too, depending on what the circumstances are with the ownership and everything. So I don't know if I think long-term he's going to be the guy when this team is good again, that he'll be the manager. I mean, this is not Minnesota. This is not, Milwaukee. This is not something where people are going to, stand for 4 or 5 years of the same manager, the same voice, kind of, while the team is floundering. I mean, look at Terry Francona. I think that's a perfect example. Francona never really got old here, even though he's in a lot of the same situation that Sandberg was back in the late 90s. I mean, and then Francona in 2000 when they kind of fell apart that 1 year when they had they had mortgaged everything for that 1 year and got Danny Chartable and a couple other pitchers and all that. That ended up being the end of Francona.
Kevin Cooney's with us here. The Phillies play the Pirates, a 4-game set at Citizens Bank Park. It'll be Jerome Williams going tonight. One guy who's a veteran that could end up doing something for him is Aaron Harang, Kevin. Is he a guy that the Phillies maybe did something right with, got him on a nice deal? Is he a guy that you can envision, getting moved, sooner, or do you think they'll hold on to him as long as they can and try to do something close to that deadline?
Well, honestly, I know that there's a lot of criticism of Ruben Amaro over moves. His moves this offseason, I told you this at the time, I thought were pretty good. I mean, you look at what Eflin and Wendell and all them have done so far at Double-A, but to sign Harang on a 1-year deal when it makes him at a kind of a friendly salary makes him tradable. I mean, this is not A.J. Burnett last year, who, had the big salary and then had the vesting option, which made him poison to any team, even in contention, that wanted him. I mean, the 1 year, $5 million makes him very appealing. So I think around the deadline, there's going to be a market. If Aaron Harang keeps healthy and he can pitch the way he has, there'll be a market for him. Chad Billingsley, they tried the same kind of risk too. I mean, it's a low risk, high reward proposition. I know Billingsley hasn't looked great in these first 2 starts, but I bet that Billingsley, will probably turn in a couple good outings, and they'll find a little bit of a market for him because he's on an economically friendly deal, and it's kind of, again, there's no risk, and it buys time until you get those young arms up here in a year or two.
About a month ago, a lot of criticism of Papelbon with some of the things he said, but he's kind of been a model citizen since that, if you can say that about Papelbon. Do you think that will force teams to maybe call the Phillies if he continues to pitch as well as he is?
It was funny. I was actually talking with our buddy Ryan Lawrence earlier today. We were doing something else, and we both said that we think that Papelbon's the guy who's most likely to move because there's so many teams that need a closer. You look at the Blue Jays, you look at the Tigers, you look at, you can look at the Dodgers in a lot of ways. And that contract diminishes, obviously, with the passage of time. And it's less of a nut to kind of absorb for a team. The Phillies are going to obviously have to pay some of it, but, I mean, it's less for even a team to have to think about taking. And then the other part of that is, that he's shown himself to be a pretty good citizen within this clubhouse. Look, he'll say stuff that'll annoy management and everything. You talk to the guys in that bullpen, Papelbon is loved because of the way he's kind of worked with all the young guys, and they see him. Remember, this is the guy that they saw when they were in high school and college at that closer role. So I think there's a lot of mutual admiration there, and Papelbon seemed to enjoy that. And, I've kind of come around on Papelbon. I got to admit, I was one of those who just viewed him as a loudmouth and everything. But I also kind of enjoy the fact, A, he's one person who's willing to speak his mind and admit, I want to go pitch for a winner. And 2, that his actions, his on-field actions night after night, with the exception of 1-2 month stretch at the end of 2013, have been just what this team has asked for. you can't blame him for what's going on here.
Yeah, Kevin, he has pitched really well, and I know a lot of people around baseball have really, taken to him in terms of that he's pitching way better. He's learned how to pitch, it looks like, even though his velocity's not there. He looks like a guy who has, taught himself how to be a better pitcher rather than just relying on blowing the fastball by. So we'll see if the Phillies can find a taker for him.
You've seen that with his influence a little bit on Ken Giles. Look, Giles did not have his velocity early in the season, okay? But he was able to throw the slider, was able to kind of mix pitches in, and while he had some control issues, was generally effective and was able to get out of situations. And now you're seeing Giles that has kind of found his velocity again and has been able to work, and has made him a better pitcher, I think, to this point. So, within the last 2-3 weeks. Of course, we would have liked to have seen that yesterday, but that's a whole different story.
Absolutely. Now, Kevin, let me get your take on what we're watching with Chase Utley here. Obviously, he's been a struggle, and some people would say, Amaro said, well, it's been really bad luck. Is it declining skills? Is it, age? Is it bad luck? What is your take on what you're watching from Chase Utley?
It's both, and I know that sounds like a Weasley kind of excuse, but, I mean, you look at the batting average with balls put in play, and it was in the last time I checked over the weekend, it was like 081 to 082. And, that's something that, quite frankly, that's bad luck. The averages of that, when you put a ball in play, the average is usually around 240, 250, okay? So the fact that he's hitting balls and it's just finding people, yeah, it's a little bit of bad luck. But there's also signs of diminishing skills. There's also the slower bat speed. I mean, he's not a power hitter anymore. I think that's one of the things when you criticize Ryne Sandberg about leaving him in 3-hole, it's not acknowledging what he's not anymore. He's not a power hitter. I mean, he had his first double of the year yesterday. I mean, he has 3 home runs, 2 of them in the same game. I mean, this is just not the same Chase Utley as 2-3 years ago, because he doesn't necessarily have that quick swing anymore. I mean, he's trying, but it's just not that quick twitch action that you would expect him to generate a lot of power from. So I don't think he'll be a 200 hitter for the season. I think he'll be above that, probably 240 and everything. And then the dilemma comes, what do you do at that point? Do you put him in a spot where, he's going to make those 500 plate appearances and then the option kicks in for $15 million for next year? Or do you look at what's best for the franchise long term? It's a fine line to go walk, to balance the loyalty and respect that he's earned through his time here, and the business sense, which is probably that it's time to move on.
Yeah, that's an interesting take right there, because they does have that vesting option. Do they want him to hit that vesting option? Do they not want him to hit that vesting option? It'll be interesting to see how they play this thing out, because he's got those for the next, 3 seasons, 500 plate appearances. That's it, right? It just is 500. Yeah,
it's 500 plate appearances. And the thing is, though, I mean, he's a guy who has a lot of pride, so I don't think he's going to just sit around for the money. I don't think he's going to do the 5-team tour, if you will. He's not going to do the Steve Carlin farewell. But, I mean, if you look at it, you got to, it's still a lot of money to walk away from. So, I mean, quite honestly, what do you do? I think the Phillies will probably see how it plays out through the end of June. Then that's the time you've got to start looking and seeing. Remember, 500 plate appearances, and the only other way out of that, if he gets above 500, is if he's on the disabled list at the end of the year.
Okay, let's turn to Howard then, who's hitting, got his 6 home run the other day. Are you seeing anything different from Howard, or is he just still a big guy who's getting lucky from time to time?
No, I think you're seeing more of a push off his back leg. I think he seems a little more comfortable at the plate. He's using more parts of the field. Catching up with fastballs a little better. He needs about 2 or 3 weeks more of this, and then I think you could see a market. I mean, you look at teams like the Orioles, you look at a team like the Mariners, or the Mariners, period. I mean, who could use a designated hitter type bat middle of the lineup. It'll be interesting to see if they would be willing to bite if he has a couple more weeks and the Phillies continue to pick up a lot of the salary. Part of it too is Ben Lafayette hasn't exactly proved that he can be an everyday first baseman. Just not happening right now.
No, but what is your take on the young guys in the minors, including Franco? A lot of those guys have been performing well, but Franco's one guy who I guess after the 15th, the Phillies can bring him up and save a year. Do you anticipate that he will be up here sooner than later?
Well, I think the key is how comfortable they feel with Cody Ashley playing left field. I mean, because if Michael Franco, if Cody Ashley can play left field, I think Michael Franco will be up. Ashley will go to left. You need Michael Franco when he comes up. He's got to play. You can't just bring him up and sit him on the bench. You can't do what they did with Dominic Brown after Jason Worth's injury in 2010. You got to have him play through and struggle, but just get through the time. If he's not going to play every day, then don't bring him up.
What is their plans with Brown then?
That's unknown. I mean, it's amazing. He's almost persona non grata from what we can gather around here. I mean, the Phillies say that, when we talked to Ruben after his demotion, on the last road trip, Ruben was like, hey, he's still a big part of our plan. We just want to get him right. Well, he had a pretty decent week or so down at Lehigh Valley. Haven't heard a whisper of him coming up because, you got a little bit of an outfield quandary. If you put Ashley in left, you figure he's going to split time with Ruff, okay, in some way. All right, you're moving Revere down the right, and you got Herrera in center. Where are you going to phase this out? I think they would like to keep Francoeur around too, because quite honestly, they like him in the clubhouse. He's a veteran guy who I think they feel like is a good mentor for younger guys. So, I don't think any of us have a feel on where this is going.
Yeah, he's an interesting. You're right. He's an interesting one, and if he comes up, that's the whole outfield would be left-handed. And there's another issue where they seem like they've been doing a lot of trying to match the righties and the lefties. Brown, Herrera, Revere, and Ashley would all be left-handed if Ashley moved to the outfield. So you're right. That is a tough one, and I guess there's not a lot of takers for Dominic Brown at this point.
No, it's amazing. I mean, if you think about it, he could end up a throw-in in an eventual Hamels deal or an eventual, a Harang or a Howard or something. He could be a throw-in. And this is a guy who, remember, was talked about as a trade bait for, Roy Halladay, and that's kind of amazing.
Sure is. Kevin Cooney with the Phillies. They take on the Pirates tonight. Probably not the best time to take on the Pirates, but 4-game set right now at Citizens Bank Park for Philadelphia. Jerome Williams tonight as the Phils back in action. He's at Kevin Cooney from Calkins Media, the Bucks County Courier-Times. For more, check out that piece on Ryne Sandberg and how he's been hurting the team here. Good stuff, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Mike.